Hello everyone, this is Anu here. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I am going to discuss one topic in detail, that is Docker volume. In my previous video, I have shown with respect to the application how this Docker volume has an effect on the persistence data storage. Today I'm just going to deep dive into the data volume and I am going to explain it with respect to the Docker container. Okay. I will be spinning a MySQL image from the Docker Hub. Then we will create an image with the persistent volume and without persistent volume, and I will demonstrate how it is going to work. And I'll be going to discuss the architecture first. Then I will go deep into the command line and show you what are the effect of having a persistent volume to store the data and not having the effect. Let's get started. Let's go ahead and explain what is this persistent volume or Docker volumes and all. Okay, so data volume, that is Docker volumes are used to store the data of any backend database which use with any of the applications, or we can use to store any data which is related to our application. There are situations the application doesn't store any data, but in most of the cases, our application need to store the data in backend databases and all. In that case, we need to have the persistent volume, which store our data persistently. Even though if the container goes down, the data is safe. So this is the case without volume. The complete container is running inside the Docker container. So in that case, if I am executing docker rm-f, the container is deleted along with the data will be deleted. Whereas in case if I have the Docker volume configured, in that case, the Docker volume or the data about that particular application will be stored outside the Docker container. If you see here, this is a Docker container. This is a MySQL without volume and running on MySQL 8 process. And read write will go to the mount point, which is inside that Docker container. Um, the activity is going inside that active container, but the data is real data is saying outside the Docker container into the Docker volume. If we are executing the Docker rm-f container name, the container will be deleted, whereas the data is preserved because that volume, that data is residing outside the container. So this is a diagrammatic representation what is going on in our terminal. We are going to execute this Docker commands and container. This is the container without any volume. MySQL process start the insert, select, delete, and on. Once I execute the command rm-rf, the container will be deleted or the data will be removed. Whereas in case of the container with volume, when I start executing the command, it will go to the container and it will process the data and insert the data into the Docker, that is amount volume outside the Docker container. If I am executing Docker rm-rf or rm-f Docker image or Docker container name, it will be deleted. It's a safe delete because the data is written outside the Docker container and we can retrieve this data whenever we bring the service back. Okay, let's use a different architecture comparison. This is without volume and with volume. Without volume, we have, if we execute the Docker rm, the complete container, and our state means the data will be deleted. Whereas with volume, the data is getting preserved. Let's execute these few commands and practically see what is this persistent volume and how it is going to have effect. I'm not going to spin any application behind that, just executing only the MySQL. I'm going to explain. I'm going to use this Docker desktop application to demonstrate this. This is the bash terminal. First, I'm going to create a Docker image. Okay, I'm going to spin a Docker container using this command. What it will do is it will create a Docker container with this name MySQL, no volume, and this is the password, and this is the database testdb, and MySQL 8 it is going to use as the image, base image. Let's execute this command. It will download the image now, and see, it's spin up the cluster and it's up and running. and wait for a while. Let's see whether it is accessible or not. What it is doing, it is going to execute the MySQL command and getting the MySQL shell so that we can insert some data into the MySQL database. We got the MySQL console. Let's insert some data. I'm going to use the test DB. Okay. I'm going to create this test table and inserting few records. Two records I have inserted. And let's query the data. See, I'm getting this data. As of now, there is no volume. Now, I'm going to exit this MySQL shell and going to remove this container. I'm going to remove this container. See, okay, the container has gone. Earlier, the container was here, then there is no container. Now, I'm going to recreate this same container again. Okay, now I got my container back and I'm going to execute. This is what it is doing is it is going to execute the MySQL shell and using the test DB, and it is executing the command select star from users. We have earlier created those users. Let's see whether it is available or not. Use test DB and I'm concatenating the other command to select star from users. Let's see what is see. It is throwing exception. That means the MySQL database instance is not existing. That database itself is not there. That's why it is throwing the exception. And see, table test root users. Table test user doesn't exist. Let's clean up. Let's remove this container without any volume. Okay, it is removed. Then we are going to create the volume first. Then we'll mount that volume into the MySQL container we are going to create. Create the screen. And this is the command to create the volume. It is created. If you go here, we can see this MySQL data is the volume created. Go back to the container. No containers are created as of now. Now we are going to, let's see the volumes. See, we can see the MySQL volume. Let us inspect this MySQL volume which we have created. If you're inspecting this, it is going to give the metadata. Metadata means all the information about that particular volume we can get. It will inspect. Created at which date? What is the driver label? If there is any label is associated with this MySQL volume. As of now, there is no label given. Where is the mount point? And name of this volume and the options and scope. Okay, these are the metadata about that particular Docker volume. Now we are going to create the MySQL container using this volume. Okay, let's run. This is going to run. Name is MySQL with volume and MySQL root password user, and we are giving the volume -v. This is a volume data, and we are just giving that volume location. And this is the base image. Just clear the screen and execute it. Now it just created the MySQL instance with the volume. Let's execute the same commands and see whether it is going to serve the purpose or not. Right, so a few seconds, we are going to access the MySQL shell. We got the MySQL shell. Let's scroll a little bit, clear the screen. I'm going to use the same command which we used earlier to create the DB, create few users, create the table, DB, create table, and insert few records. Created the database. Now we are going to create the table. Where is it? Yeah. Now we are inserting few records. It is inserted. two records and select star from that particular volume. It is giving the records. Now what we're going to do, we are going to delete this volume and going to see whether this delete this, not the volume. We're going to delete the container and recreate the container, and we will see whether it is preserving the data or not using the Docker volume. Now I'm going to exit the container. Now we will remove the container. So if you see, this container will be removed now. So the container is gone. But if you see the volume here, the volume is still there. Let's see whether we can access that volume again once we recreate the Docker container. Let's see, through command line, we can execute Docker volume ls, and it will give the list of volumes available in our system. Okay, now we are going to recreate the same with mapping the same Docker volume again. It is created. Wait for 10 seconds, and then we'll try to access the MySQL shell again. Can try to access the MySQL shell again. This is we are going to access a MySQL shell and going to actually use this testdb and trying to query select star from users. If the volume is persistent, the data should be sitting there. We can get the data from there. The earlier result, that is Alice and Bob, I think those records will be retrieved back. It's not yet ready. Access container. Let's see. Sorry, this with no volume. Currently we are using with volume. Let's change. Find a mistake from my side. MySQL with volume. See, we are getting this result, Alice and Bob. Even though we have removed the container completely, the data is residing in the Docker volume. It is persistent. That's why when we recreate the volume and map this volume into this container, we are able to get the data. Okay, so that's all about this demonstration. If you want, we can go ahead and remove this container and volume. The one thing is, when we remove this volume, first of all we need to delete the container first, then only it will allow to remove the uh, volume. I'll demonstrate whether it is possible or not without removing the container. I'm going to the volume. Okay, I'm going to delete all this data volumes. Definitely it won't allow to delete the MySQL data volume. Why? Because the container is still using it. What we can do is we can delete this container first. I'm not going to stop it. It's a hard stop. I'm just going to delete it anyway. I don't need them. So delete forever. Now if we go ahead and see, if we try to delete this volume, how it will allow to do it. Now there is no container, no volume. So this is all about the demonstration of the effect of using Docker volume and without using Docker volume. Thanks for watching this video. Have a good day. Bye.